They tried to break her in public, but she rebuilt in silence. And now, the same woman they counted out just watched her 13-year-old daughter make history at New York Fashion Week. This isn't a comeback, this is legacy in motion. Let's strip the buzzwords and talk about what legacy really means. Not the glittery social media kind, but the kind that changes family trees. Real legacy is born from chaos and carried by grit. It's what happens when you take everything meant to break you and use it as the foundation for something unshakable. And if you've been watching Shari and her daughter, Mariah Rogers, you've witnessed it in motion. Their appearance at New York Fashion Week wasn't just another Momager moment, it was a power move, a full-circle testimony that pain, when redirected with purpose, can turn into generational elevation. Picture this, a 13-year-old girl from Huntsville, Alabama, not the fashion capitals of LA or New York, walking into one of the most exclusive fashion arenas in the country, not as a guest, not as a model, but as a designer. Mariah Rogers, at just 13, became one of the youngest featured creators in NYFW history. Her collection, sleek, tennis-inspired, confident, didn't just look good, it spoke volumes. It said, "I belong here." But here's the part most people miss. None of this happened by accident. Shari had been planting these seeds long before anyone noticed, while others were busy debating, gossiping, and dissecting her life on reality TV. She was building slowly, intentionally, brick by brick. Remember, this is the same woman who lived through a public unraveling, a marriage exposed to the world, cheating scandals, betrayal, and relentless online commentary. Most people would have folded under that weight. But Melody didn't just endure, she evolved. She turned survival into strategy and heartache into hustle. Now we're watching her harvest. Think about how rare this is. Countless designers with years of experience dream of that New York Fashion Week stage. Yet here's a young teen standing in the spotlight with her name printed on the official lineup. And behind her, a mother who didn't wait for opportunity. She manufactured it. Melody built a runway for her daughter while she was still dusting herself off from her own storms. And let's be clear, Mariah's collection wasn't a novelty kids line. It carried edge, personality, and command. When those models walked the runway, they weren't just showing clothes, they were announcing a presence. And when Melody sent Mariah a backstage photo of one of her pieces being worn, that pure, "Oh my God, I love it," response wasn't just excitement, it was a moment that will shape Mariah's confidence forever. But the story doesn't end there. Melody wasn't just clapping in the audience. She was making her own mark that same week. Her 7th Avenue beauty brand, the one she built from scratch with no corporate engine behind her, was featured front and center. The same body butters, soaps, and elixirs she once sold while rebuilding her life were now being used on professional models at one of fashion's biggest stages. That's not luck, that's legacy in motion. And as Melody and Mariah owned their moment, the contrast became impossible to ignore. While they were embodying what it means to build legacy, Martell Holt was once again in headlines for all the wrong reasons. Not business wins, not growth, just more chaos and distraction. It's almost predictable now. Every time Melody ascends, the noise seems to follow, trying to dim her light. But this time, the noise didn't matter. Social media saw through it. The applause was louder than the drama. Because what Melody and Mariah displayed wasn't just success, it was transformation. It was the reminder that real legacy isn't about chasing attention. It's about changing direction for yourself, and for the generations watching you rise. This moment wasn't just about fashion, it was proof that Shari didn't just survive Martell Holt's betrayal. She built something bigger because of it. The irony is, Martell could have been part of the foundation. He had every chance to help shape the legacy they once dreamed about together. But ego is expensive, and while he chose chaos, Melody chose construction. Now, from the sidelines, he's watching the very empire he could have helped build rise without him. That's not revenge. That's evolution, the natural distance that forms when one person heals and the other refuses to grow. And growth, in Melody's case, has been nothing short of remarkable. Forget the runway lights and flashing cameras, her real win happened behind the scenes. The people who met her backstage at Fashion Week didn't just see a brand owner, they felt her spirit. She wasn't there for clout or promotion, she was there to lift the room models, stylists, staff, speaking life into people who'd barely met her. That's not PR. That's purpose. That's the mark of someone who's done the inner work and come out softer, not colder. Because real leadership doesn't look like standing at the front, it looks like creating space for others to shine. And that's exactly what Melody does. Even as her platform expands, she hasn't traded empathy for ego. The higher she climbs, the more she reaches back. That's why people gravitate toward her, not because she's perfect, but because she's proof that pain doesn't have to make you bitter. It can make you better. She took every betrayal, every rumor, every sleepless night and turned them into stepping stones. Not for revenge, but for her children's future. And now, look at Mariah Rogers. 13 years old and already standing where most adults only dream. Not because of luck or viral fame, but because her mother made sure the door was already open when her time came to walk through it. That's what real power looks like. Not controlling the spotlight, but building it. And Mariah, she didn't inherit this moment, she earned it. Her collection carried structure, identity, and vision. Every piece said, "I know who I am." It wasn't child's play, it was artistry. The industry took notice to people who had never even heard of love and marriage. Huntsville were suddenly asking, "Who is Mariah Rogers?" That's when you know the work has broken through your bubble, when strangers recognize the brilliance you've raised. There's something sacred about watching a child live out a dream that once existed only in their parents' imagination. That runway wasn't just fabric and lights, it was a living symbol of what happens when discipline meets destiny. Because none of this was random, Melody has been strategizing for years. Every business she launched, every boundary she set, every tear she wiped away, all of it was part of a larger plan. A plan to ensure her daughter could bloom in peace, without the thorns that once cut her. People saw the drama back when she was trying to hold a marriage and a brand together, but they missed the discipline. Melody wasn't reacting, she was rebuilding. Brick by brick, she constructed a new life, founding her 7th Avenue beauty brand, cultivating a loyal community, transforming her pain into podcasts and her setbacks into strategy. While others used social media to vent, she used it to build. And now, her success speaks louder than any clapback ever could, because the real win isn't the noise. It's the quiet domination that even your critics can't deny. Melody's daughter is thriving, her business is scaling, her story is inspiring, and she's done it all without selling out her integrity. That's the real flex, when you win without losing yourself. Mariah isn't just benefiting from her mother's legacy, she's expanding it. That's how generational shifts happen. When one woman decides the story won't just be about surviving pain, but creating purpose. Mariah is walking her own path now, but the road beneath her feet was paved by her mother's sacrifices. This isn't just a fashion story, it's a roadmap for every parent who's ever dreamed of rewriting their family's narrative. And especially for Black mothers and daughters, it's a declaration that legacy doesn't begin with wealth. It begins with healing, vision, and the courage to believe that your story can end differently than it began. For far too long, the stories told about families like ours have revolved around pain, the broken homes, the messy endings, the public drama. We've been taught to see struggle as our headline and heartbreak as our heritage. But this moment, this runway, this mother-daughter powerhouse standing in front of flashing cameras and global attention, it's rewriting that script in real time. What Melody, Shari, and Mariah Rogers did at New York Fashion Week wasn't about escaping struggle. It was about redefining success. They showed that triumph doesn't always roar. Sometimes it glides down a runway in bold colors and quiet confidence. They proved that grace, grit, and glamour can coexist, that they must coexist if you want your healing to have texture, that a woman can rebuild after heartbreak and still raise a daughter who doesn't just survive the fallout, but thrives so brightly it lights up rooms her mother once had to crawl through. Because that's the thing about legacy, it isn't born in moments of comfort, it's forged in seasons of fire. Melody's journey didn't begin on the runway. It began in the ruins of a life that was falling apart in front of the world. Millions watched her cry on television, watched the betrayal unfold, watched her name get tossed around in gossip blogs and comment sections. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure, but Melody didn't break. She built, brick by brick, breath by breath. She started reconstructing her future with her children as her blueprint. So when she stood backstage at New York Fashion Week, watching her daughter's collection make its debut, she wasn't just watching a fashion show, she was witnessing a full-circle moment. Every tear, every late night, every prayer whispered when the cameras stopped rolling had led to this. This was the payoff for years of discipline and faith. For every time she chose peace over pettiness, purpose over pain. The crowd at Fashion Week saw fabrics and silhouettes, but those who followed Melody's journey saw something deeper, redemption stitched into every seam. They saw a mother who refused to let bitterness dim her brilliance. They saw a little girl who once sat in the shadows of her mother's heartbreak, now standing in her own light. Confident and radiant. They saw what happens when a woman decides that generational curses end with her. When she shields her children from chaos and instead feeds them confidence, daily, deliberately, like sunlight and the beauty of it all. Mariah didn't lose her innocence in the process. That's rare in this world. Especially in industries like fashion and entertainment that devour youth before it has a chance to bloom. But even as her name appeared in headlines and photos from the show began circulating online, she reacted like any other 13-year-old girl might, with disbelief and excitement that couldn't be contained. That unfiltered joy is evidence of the protection surrounding her. It shows how Melody managed to balance nurturing ambition without stealing childhood. She let her daughter be a kid while quietly preparing her for moments like this. That kind of parenting is its own art form. It takes restraint, patience, and an unshakable belief in timing. Because the truth is, success without grounding is a trap. But when you raise a child to understand who she is before the world tells her who to be, that's when real legacy takes shape. Melody didn't raise Mariah for attention. She raised her for alignment. Every lesson, every example, every no that felt uncomfortable in the moment was really a setup for sustainability. She wasn't just preparing her daughter for a stage, she was preparing her for staying power. And that's why this moment hit differently. Because it wasn't just about clothes or cameras, it was a message to every Black mother and daughter who's ever been underestimated or written off. For generations, society has been far too comfortable defining Black womanhood through struggle. We've seen the narratives: the strong Black woman who never gets to rest, the angry Black woman who's misunderstood, the broken family that becomes a cautionary tale. But what Melody and Mariah displayed in New York flipped that entire stereotype on its head. They showed the world that excellence can be inherited, that healing can be modeled, and that elegance doesn't have to come from privilege, it can come from perseverance. This was a visual representation of what it looks like when a mother turns her wounds into wisdom and passes that wisdom down like wealth. Imagine the message that sends to young girls watching that they don't have to choose between softness and strength, that they can be both powerful and peaceful, both ambitious and authentic, that they can dream without apology and succeed without shame. For so many, Melody's life played out like a lesson in resilience, but what we saw on that runway was evolution. She's not the same woman who once had to defend herself on reality TV. She's the woman who took every misunderstanding and turned it into momentum. She's the mother who built her own table and then pulled up a chair for her daughter. And in doing so, she didn't just change her life, she changed the possibilities for every woman watching. Behind the glamour of New York Fashion Week, there's a story that doesn't fit into headlines. It's the story of a woman who refused to be defined by what broke her, and a daughter who became living proof that generational pain can transform into generational power. It's also a reminder to anyone walking through their own hard season. Your breaking point can become your building point. Melody didn't start this chapter with everything figured out. She started with faith and a vision. She learned to build while bleeding, to dream while doubting, and to keep moving even when nobody was clapping. And that's the kind of story that stays with people long after the lights go down and the runway empties. Now, the world knows the names Mariah Rogers and 7th Avenue Beauty. But more than that, they've seen the blueprint. They've seen how legacy isn't just what you leave behind once you're gone. It's what you build intentionally while you're still here. Melody is walking in hers. Every step, every decision, every lesson is a brick in that legacy. And the world is watching in awe, not just because it's beautiful, but because it's possible. Because somewhere out there, another mother is watching this story unfold and realizing she can do the same. She can heal loudly, build quietly, and raise children who'll one day stand where she once stumbled. That's the ripple effect of purpose. It doesn't end with you, it multiplies through the lives you touch. And that's what makes this story bigger than a fashion show. It's not just a celebration of design or success. It's a living declaration that broken beginnings can still lead to beautiful outcomes. That when you choose healing over hate, discipline over drama, and faith over fear, the world eventually takes notice. So yes, the lights at Fashion Week will dim, and the applause will fade, but the legacy Melody and Mariah built that night will echo far longer in boardrooms, in classrooms, in living rooms, where mothers and daughters are watching and whispering, if they can do it, maybe we can too. Because this isn't just about a runway, it's about rewriting the narrative for every family that's ever been told their story could only end in struggle. Melody Shari proved that your past doesn't define you, your persistence does. And Mariah Rogers showed that when you plant your roots in love, the next generation will always rise higher. And the most touching part, Even in the middle of all that prestige, the flashing cameras, the whispered chatter of editors, the applause echoing through the venue, Mariah was still every bit a 13-year-old girl. She was overwhelmed, thrilled, and texting her mom from backstage with wide-eyed excitement and emoji-filled messages. That blend of innocence and accomplishment is rare, especially in an industry that often forces children to grow up too fast. It's proof that she hasn't been swallowed by the spotlight. And that's no accident. It's the result of deliberate, loving guidance. Melody never rushed her daughter into fame. She allowed Mariah to grow at her own pace, to explore her creativity without the crushing pressure of public expectation. She gave her daughter space to discover herself before the world started defining her. That patience, that protection, is what built Mariah's poise, the quiet confidence that can't be taught, only modeled. Because that's what real parenting looks like in the age of visibility, creating room for your children to dream freely, while anchoring them in reality. Melody has mastered that balance. She didn't push her daughter into the spotlight. She prepared her for it, so when the light finally hit, Mariah didn't flinch. She glowed. This moment, this milestone, isn't the finale, it's the prologue to something greater. The world now knows the names Mariah Rogers and 7th Avenue Beauty, but what they've really witnessed is the unveiling of a legacy built on resilience and vision. This is what happens when a woman refuses to wait for validation, when she takes her pain and turns it into a platform. Because legacy isn't about the applause after you're gone. It's about the impact you make while you're still here, still building, still believing. Melody Shari didn't just talk about generational change, she engineered it. She designed it through every sleepless night, every calculated risk, every choice to lead with purpose instead of pride. She walked through fire and somehow came out carrying blueprints for others to follow. Now, the world is watching, not because it's trendy, but because it's transformational. They see a mother and daughter rewriting what legacy looks like in real time. And as they continue to rise, they remind us that true power isn't inherited. It's built, nurtured, and protected. Melody didn't just build it, she's walking in it. And with every step she takes, she's showing a generation of women and girls that their story doesn't have to end in survival. It can begin in strength.